Most members strongly condemned the war in Ukraine. However, some member countries held other views and different assessments of the situation and sanctions. But the fact is, KC Singh, just a few days ago, on the first anniversary of the aggression, India and China abstained from a vote condemning the Russian aggression. So both India and China seem to be at the moment unwilling to take sides. Now, some would argue that's the only way for countries like India and China, in a way, given our past relations with the Russians. But are we finding out, will we eventually get isolated if we continue to take this position? We are going to have to take a stand sooner or later, surely.
Look, this is a general position of countries globally. The war is being, unfortunately, just seen as a European thing. I don't think countries in Africa or Latin America or most of the Asian countries are treating it as a global episode, which is impinging them directly. It is impinging them indirectly. So at the moment, India can sort of live with it, playing this kind of a role. But the Chinese, I think, have a different role. There's also the additional competition between China and US. And that's why the Americans warned them. This was their intelligence report, but they came public with it, saying that they had got reports that the Chinese may be beginning to transfer weapons to Russia. And they said that will be a red line. So they'll be concerned about that. And we've got our own problem with the Chinese. We had a joint secretary dealing with East Asia in Beijing very recently. So I think we might have discussed some things there, because later when President Xi comes here, obviously we can't continue to have the standoff in LAC. The way it is, I think, to move forward, we need to lay that to rest. Are the Chinese ready for it? We don't know. So there is a lot of drama and theater at bilateral, various friction points between countries, Ukraine war. But essentially, India wanted this summit to enable India to be the voice of Global South and bring up those issues of sustainable development, equity, indebtedness, climate finance, which the focus has gone off all those issues, and security has taken center stage.
Right.
So how to change that? That is the Indian challenge.
You know, the challenge also, Richard Russo, in a way, is that the world as the Global South sees it is very different from the world that Europe and America sees it. As KC Singh mentioned, there are a number of people who see this as a European problem or a Western world problem, that Europe or the Western world can't sort of give moral lectures to India about this war, that at the end of the day, India will do what is in India's national interest, and that could be being completely neutral, given, as I said, past relations with both Ukraine, whom we've given humanitarian aid, and Russia, with whom we have a strong strategic relationship.
Well, and I think, in the United States, we balance that, right? We look at various conflicts around the world, various tension points today and tomorrow, and which countries are actually lining up, to try to support peace and stability. And then, frankly, when you think about what's taking place in Delhi this week, the most important meeting may not be the G20 foreign ministers meeting. Most likely, the group that seems to be moving towards actions versus, the larger growing rival, China, is the Quad. And the fact that the Quad ministers plan on having a meeting later in the week, I think that is more likely to result in quantifiable outcomes that are going to contribute meaningfully to security in the region than anything that's going to take place in the G20. And the fact that India has been working and engaging partners so well in areas that look at that strategic competition with China, that's given India space where there's less pressure from Washington on Russia than you might have seen. So a lot of conflict areas around the world. I think Ukraine may not be even the biggest one in the world when you think about what's happening in Ethiopia in recent years. So as long as we got cooperation in other areas, I think that Washington is willing to give some space and find those areas of opportunity to engage.